That's
Just
fine.
one?
Is that okay? Okay, thank you all very much. There are many issues we would like to speak about today and share with you, but I believe the thing that is uppermost in everyone's mind, and of course for the greatest concern and fear in the country, is on the issue of crime. So we met earlier today, and we've been in conversations, and like so many of our citizens, we are very alarmed by the upsurgent violence in the country. I believe as we speak, we are seeing unidentified bodies with head and limbs severed, a pensioner grandmother stabbed to death in her home, a Dubbers vendor being currently executed in the morning, preparing to ply his trade. We have seen our young children, our young girls brutally murdered. And the country seems to have descended into anarchy where no one is safe, in public and not even in the comfort of their own homes. Gone are the days of when we would speak about your home being your castle. What is even more frightening is the seemingly deliberate lack of interest by the Prime Minister, who is probably too busy golfing on the job. He is the chairman of the national security, the head of the government, the head of his cabinet. And there has been a deafening silence and a total lack of action in addressing this critical state of hopelessness and fear in Trinidad and Tobago. It is appalling that the Prime Minister chose to address the country's collective pain and desperation. How? Via a press release on Saturday. Instead of seeking to comfort citizens by outlining measures taken to combat this state of terror, merely acknowledging what everybody knew, and he said that the crime levels are heinous and traumatic. Wake up, Dr. Rowley. Wake up, Prime Minister. This is insulting, I think, and unacceptable to the citizens of our countries who have placed their trust in the government to uphold the Constitution and guarantee them their fundamental right to safety and security. Such a weak afterthought of a press release amid one of the most terrifying times in our nation's history also speaks of leadership that is lacking in humanity and clearly denotes that the Rowley-led government is not only impotent in the fight against crime, but seems to lack any genuine ability or desire to combat crime on behalf of citizens. The country is in crisis, and I call on the Rowley government to immediately convene an extraordinary session of Parliament to debate the unacceptable crime situation with the specific aim of informing the public of their immediate plans, strategies, policies, the measures they intend to utilize to ensure an immediate short-term reduction of murder, kidnapping, rape, and assault rates. One of the key issues that needs to be immediately discussed is the overwhelming call by citizens to be able to defend themselves against aggressive criminal elements. Citizens are under attack. They are defenseless and helpless. Their cries must be heard. The state has failed to protect them and keep them safe. It is the view of the opposition that the existing legal and administrative systems and procedures need to be streamlined so that the balance can be tipped in favor of law-abiding citizens legitimately acquiring firearms to protect their homes and their families. People have a right to defend themselves and their loved ones in the face of the state's demonstrated inability to guarantee their safety and protection. In addition to the new regime to allow law-abiding citizens to defend themselves with arms, the time has come for us also to consider allowing women the right to legally carry and use pepper spray and tasers and of like kind to defend themselves. We cannot expect different results if we continue to do the things the same way. The situation we face today is a direct result of government's incompetence and mismanagement. How did we get to this point? And there is no point, or indeed it is pointless, to continue to blame the former government. It is worth noting that under my government, we responded to violence and made significant progress in reducing crime. In fact, serious crimes was brought to its lowest level in more than 3 decades under our watch. We built an integrated national security coordinating apparatus. We built an integrated national security coordinated apparatus, strengthened the legislative framework, and laid the asset and infrastructure foundations for efficient response by law enforcement agencies. The National Operations Center, which linked all arms of the protective services to address intelligence gathering, real-time monitoring, preventive interventions, and crime-fighting actions, were established under the partnership government. This was reconfigured under the current government, and to a great extent, such reconfiguration rendered the National Operations Center basically ineffective. We established a rapid response unit which delivered more efficient response times to our citizens and increased the visibility of law enforcement to create a feeling of security. And we completed 9 police stations across the country: Duncan Street, Arima, Piaco, Maloney, Kumoto, Brasso, Labre, Oropouche, and Maruga. We established a counter-human trafficking unit and a National Security Training Academy. The latter was subsumed under the controversial SSA, Security Services Agency, by the present government when they came into office. The Community Comfort Patrol, which assisted in visibility and in creating a feeling of safety in communities by acting as a deterrent to criminal activities, was scrapped by the current administration. Another initiative of the partnership government, the Special Operations Group, a specialized group comprising members of the various law enforcement agencies to deal specifically with counter-terrorist operations, was also shut down by the present government. These were some of the anti-crime initiatives which were working, and we had a plan to ensure citizens' safety and security and reduce crime. It was our intention to reform the justice system and legal framework to deal with backlogs and have the courts work more effectively. In addition to the foregoing, we took action with regard to implementation of the death penalty. In this regard, we brought a legislation, the Constitution Amendment Capital Offences Bill, which came commonly to be known as the Hanging Bill. We recall that Dr. Rowley and the PNM did not support that hanging bill. It was defeated in the House of Representatives in February 2011 with a vote of 29 for and 11 against. And we want to remember that this particular bill needed not the normal 2/5 but the 3/5 majority for passage. When the bill was put forward again in 2015, Dr. Rowley wrote to the then Attorney General that the PNM would not support the legislation. Today, the Prime Minister is silent. Today, the Attorney General says his hands are tied, crying crocodile tears over this matter with respect to implementation of the death penalty. You will recall that in early September 2016, we met members of the opposition. I think it was Dr. Monilal, Ms. Ramona, MP Ramona Ramdial, Senator Ramdeen, I believe, and myself. We met with the government at my request, met with Dr. Rowley and his team to discuss what we call measures against crime, measures for crime fighting. And that was somewhere on or about the 3rd of September last year, if I recall correctly. We met with the Prime Minister and his team about crime. We presented plans which included interventions such as bringing back the death penalty, for implementation of the death penalty. At the time, the Prime Minister took the view that there were some changes that needed to be made, of course, to the bill that we had brought, and many other plans that we suggested, interventions such as more police on the ground, closure of porous borders, implementation of the DNA Act, and other measures which were widely carried in the newspapers, of course. During that meeting, the Prime Minister gave us assurances to have the Joint Select Committee on National Security, to have it chaired by an independent senator rather than a member of the executive or cabinet minister, to be a part of the new strategy in the fight against crime. To date, nothing has been implemented with respect to the assurances given at that meeting. None of those assurances have been kept. Today I want to say that we remain committed to meet and help the government to deal with the scourge of crime, in spite of the fact that the assurances given previously were not honored. Today, we call upon the Prime Minister once again to meet with the opposition for us to discuss again ways in which the opposition can assist in the fight against crime. We have a Prime Minister today who complains about the amount of money spent on the police service, and who has not stated any intention to equip our national security agencies with the tools they need in the fight against crime. The government is all talk and no action. It appears that the Prime Minister's head of the National Security Council is happy to pass responsibility and blame onto others. Every time this issue about crime fighting is raised, the Prime Minister passes the blame onto others, whether it be the police service, whether it be the former government, the government that we were in prior to this one. So he passes that responsibility and blame to others. He seems bereft of any ideas, intentions, or policies to uphold the constitutional rights of citizens, and that should be and is the first and ultimate priority of any government. Our Constitution sets out very clearly in Section 4A and B, the right of our citizens to security of the person, of property, and of course for protection by due process of law. And that basic constitutional mandate that is given to any government is being breached by the present government. We look further and we see on an equally important issue, and note once again the silence of the Prime Minister and members of his administration, and in particular the Ministers of Foreign Affairs and National Security, in the face of very damning and destructive branding of Trinidad and Tobago as a terrorist state by MSNBC correspondent Malcolm Nance over the weekend. This is in direct response to the controversial order by the United States President Donald Trump to ban travelers from 6 predominantly Muslim countries from entering the U.S. for 90 days in the wake of reviewed methods they have to combat terrorism. Nance was speaking on MSNBC on Saturday during a show hosted by Joy Ann Reid, and there Nance criticized this move, and he said that Trinidad and Tobago, the Bahamas and Brazil have more terrorist ties than those countries placed under the recent U.S. travel ban. And he asked why these countries, which include Trinidad and Tobago, were not included. It is instructive to know that almost immediately upon these utterances by Nance, the MSNBC correspondent, the Prime Minister of the Bahamas refuted allegations and ensured that there was a retraction. So far, however, there has been deafening silence from the Rowley-led administration to these allegations, or to any steps or initiatives being taken by his government with respect to the threat from terrorism. That now has the effect of being taken as truth by the international community, and may I say it also has the potential now for Trinidad and Tobago being included in any list of banned countries, of the countries that have been named, the 6 that have been named. I want to remind you, only 3 years ago, while in opposition, Dr. Rowley was not as silent on this issue as he chooses to be now. I want to remind you of his comments back then when I tackled the issue of the ISIS threat at the United Nations as the country's then Prime Minister. And if you look at the newspaper reports, you will see one headline carried in the Newsday of Sunday, September 28, 2014. Headline, Rowley blasts Trinidad and Tobago's support of the UN Security Resolution. I quote from that article, opposition leader Dr. Keith Rowley yesterday lambasted Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar for Trinidad and Tobago's co-sponsorship of a United Nations Security Council resolution on the fight against terrorism, saying it was best for Trinidad and Tobago to have passed up on the occasion. The article continues, Trinidad and Tobago cannot afford to declare war on terrorists at a time when you can stay away, Rowley said. The resolution was supported by over 90 countries. On Wednesday, was put to the UN Security Council by U.S. President Barack Obama in New York. The article continues. And Rowley, in addressing constituents at that time, made these comments on the issue of terrorism and Trinidad and Tobago supporting the resolution in the fights against terrorism. Dr. Rowley said, and I quote, in any international issue you put Trinidad and Tobago interest first. And so he was very vocal then in condemning the move by Trinidad and Tobago through the then government of co-sponsoring the U.S. resolution, UN resolution on the fight against terrorism. The fact is, in my respectful view, that the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago is duty-bound to ensure that our country's image as a democratic and peaceful nation is preserved internationally for various reasons, of course, including trade relations and protecting the rights to freedom of movement and freedom from discrimination of all our citizens abroad. Such a statement by the U.S. correspondent has the potential to curtail these rights for our country and citizens abroad, and I therefore call on the Prime Minister to immediately address the damning allegations and or to state his government's measures and strategies and policies to deal with terrorist activity in order to protect our citizens and our country's image. Against this inertia, if this state of affairs continues, it may well be that Trinidad and Tobago joins the list of unfortunate states whose citizens have been banned from traveling to the United States. In conclusion, I wish to reiterate that what is needed now is a leader with the courage to make tough decisions to address the issues facing the country, in particular crime. And Dr. Rowley has thus far shown that he does not have the capacity so to do. The opposition has made multiple attempts to engage government on the issue of crime, we will recall, in the Parliament and outside of the Parliament. We remain willing to work with all stakeholders, including government, in the national interest. I want to just summarize some of the measures, and these are not all, which could be useful in the fight against crime. 1, an extraordinary parliamentary sitting to discuss crime. 2, a new regime for granting firearm users license so as to give law-abiding citizens, allowing them to arm themselves against the criminals. 3, on terrorism, the need for the Prime Minister to speak on this issue at the earliest opportunity, given in the context of the statement made by Nance on the MSNBC program. A call for reconvening of bipartisan talks on crime. And finally, on the issue of the hanging bill. In fact, I want to give to you a copy of that bill and to give back to the government this bill that we brought since 2011. Today, when we see an Attorney General wringing his hands and crying crocodile tears, when should this bill have been passed then, even with amendments that they would have made, we could have had that issue dealt with. It is totally hypocritical for the Attorney General today to be reported to have said his hands are tied, Privy Council has tied him up, the court's tying them up. You've been there for 17 months. We spoke to you last year, September, about this bill. You then told us you did not agree with the formula in which the way in which this bill was drafted, yet you have failed on the basis of your assurances that you would relook it. So we call upon the government as well to bring back the hanging bill to the Parliament to deal with the death penalty in a timely manner. And that is what this bill was to do. All the things the Attorney General is speaking about now, tying his hands, this bill was meant to address those delays and obstacles in implementation of the death penalty. This, however, I must say, is ex post facto, and for those who want to rely only on the death penalty to deal with the issue of fighting crime, we will only deal with those, or may be able to deal where the crime has already been committed. And this is why I call for the other measures when we had met the Prime Minister, several others which we'll share with you, those initiatives we had raised with the Prime Minister in the anti-crime talks last September. So 5 points here basically. Extraordinary sitting of Parliament we convene. We convene an extraordinary sitting, if you all remember, only recently to deal with the THA elections where the government got it all wrong and could not count, from 1 to 21 to get their 21 days notice that was required. Secondly, for us to consider a new regime for granting firearm license, because clearly the present system is not working, and the citizen, in my respectful view, deserves to have a right to arm themselves, law-abiding citizens, that they would be able to fight such criminals and bandits. I ask any one of you sitting here today, and if you are in your home and a bandit turns up and attempts not just to rob you or to mutilate you in whatever way, but is attempting to rape your daughter or your son, because they're doing that too, what do you have? What defense would you have? What defense would any one of us have when they invade your home? Senator Mark tells us about the barbarians that are your gate. The barbarians are in your home. You need to be able to defend yourself and your family. And why? Because the state has failed in its core duty of providing safety and security for the citizens of our country, or law-abiding citizens. I call upon the government for us to move into a new regime for the granting of license to carry a firearm. So of course, you will have all the conditions and all the restraints, all the parameters within which this can be done to grant law-abiding citizens a gun to defend themselves and their families. What would you do, I ask you, sitting in your home? Bandit comes in, a criminal comes in, a barbarian is inside your home with you are there with your children. What will you pelt them with? Stone? You might not even be able to find a stone. What will you do? What defense do you have? What defense does any law-abiding citizen have? And so extraordinary times, in my respectful view, calls for extraordinary measures. And this is one that I call for open discussion on, for us to find the parameters within which we can have citizens given a right to arm themselves against the bandits. So these measures, I thank you all very much. I don't know if members want to remind me of anything else, but we feel very, very strongly on this issue. The government has really dragged their feet on it. This is the highest level of murders we've seen in any 1 month in so many years. The highest in January, I think. In January. In any January. Of course, and our numbers are up there. You can see them. You can see those numbers we put up for you. So, and we don't have it up there for the January, but of course it's the highest in the month of January, where I had said 52, now being told is 53, with the 7 unclassified. I suppose when the forensic person comes in, the pathologist comes in to do more autopsies, then some others that are unclassified may be then classified. As you know today, no autopsies are being done because of the absence of the forensics experts to do it. Thank you very much, and if you have any questions, we will be happy to entertain.
But I do see that there was a decline in the numbers when you were in office. Sure. And now there are calls again from citizens who want to see another state of emergency. What's your position on that?
When we had implemented the state of emergency at that time, we did it in specific circumstances and in a particular context, where the national intelligence that came to the National Security Council at that time, the council which I headed as Prime Minister, was such to point that that would be one measure that could be employed. And therefore, on that issue, it is squarely in the ball court of the government, based on their intelligence that they have received, to make that call or not to make that call.
Do you think there are some need for different measures, not just new measures, but
Sure.
done time and time
Yeah,
again.
you're right. That's why. Well, you said different and not new, but that's why if you realize, I said we cannot use only the same measures to get a different result. We have to use others. On the issue of police patrols or joint patrols, you remember how we were fought down on the infamous soldier bill, um, which was to give protection to these very soldiers that are now being used again in the joint patrols. But I think if you check, each time Mr. Dillon has spoken, I believe it is 12, maybe 12 times, or more than 12 times, when he's been asked about how will you fight crime, he's talked about the joint patrols, police and soldiers out there. Yes, the time is more than the time. The time is now, the time is now. Now is the time for other measures apart from existing ones, which are obviously not sufficient or patently failing to bring in new measures. But whilst you work towards bringing in these new measures, I'm saying give the citizen, the law-abiding citizen, the right to arm themselves, to protect themselves, whilst you put all these other things in place, because they will take time, whatever new measure you want to do. And that's why I'm asking for the extraordinary sitting for the government to tell the country, through the parliament, what are their plans in the immediate short term to deal with the level of criminality in Trinidad and Tobago.
And many times, the opposition has come to the parliament with motions or matters of urgent discussion, and those have been shot down.
Yes.
Why do you think this time will be any different?
Because each of those times it was important and critical and urgent, and I think the urgency is far beyond urgent now. It is extraordinary. Where we've reached today, we are at an extraordinary state of affairs in the levels of criminality. Why would it be different? Well, that is something you may want to ask to the government, but it has reached beyond urgent. It is now extraordinary. We have in fact filed a motion on the private members, but that is so constrained in terms of the timing of when it can happen, is once a month and so on. This is, in fact, the chief whip has been trying to reach the leader of government business to see which day in the month of February would in fact be private members' day, so that such a debate can take place. But I think it is more than just a private member's motion, and it should be the government. Honorable Prime Minister already talked on action now. It is for the government at this time, in these extraordinary, critical, dangerous times, for the government to take action. And that is where we hope. We live in hope, huh? As human beings, I think we all would want to live in hope, although many people are telling me, no, it's hopelessness and there is no hope. But that the government will listen to the cries of the citizenry and act differently.
Constitutionally, you talk about bringing back the handbill to Parliament to deal with the death penalty in the current situation, but what guarantee is there that the opposition will support the bill?
Well, this was our bill. The government did not support it. The opposition, now government, did not support it at that time. And that is why I'm calling we can have dialogue, so that we can, I'm calling on the government, let's have the dialogue, so that we can agree this is what we will do. We gave that undertaking since last year, September, about the death penalty and legislation, and we told the government, bring your legislation. So your question is, what guarantee you have that we will support it? What guarantee you have that we will not support it? The government is, the opposition is committed to working with the government, of course, to pass good law, to ensure that we can deal with this really critical situation in our country now. Oh, why are you tying FATCA to this heinous situation of crime? Please, please. What do you mean? You mean crime? You mean crime? Okay,
Yes.
okay, I understand your question, yes. Will we walk out on a FATCA bill? Well, the FATCA bill is not before the Parliament of the whole now. It is before a committee, the Joint Select Committee, which is what we had requested. And as far as I am, we don't have all the details because we are not on that committee and we are not entitled to have the details. But that discussion is ongoing. Our members are attending the various meetings. I think the next one is scheduled for Wednesday of, well, today's Monday, this week. Okay? So we will not walk out because the bill is not there. Yes.
correlation between times of economic hardness and large movement over the end of the year. Do you think that this is actually the case? And if so, what could be done to offset? Because you have a number of measures here, the extraordinary meeting and all that. But in terms of economic hard times, do you think that has a role to play as well?
Of course, it is one of the factors which contributes to a higher level of criminality. And I mean, on Friday, our members, MP Indar Singh, MP Fazal Karim, MP Padarath, had talked about the economy, or private motion then, dealing with the economy and things to be done or not to be done. But that is basic, that will be in the medium term rather than the immediate term. And therefore the measures that I'm mentioning here are measures I feel that can be taken almost instantly, immediately, in the short term to help us to fight the criminals and to fight crime. So yes, the economy is important. That is a whole debate in and of itself, but may not redound to immediate plans in the fight against crime. Okay?
Mrs. Persad-Bissessar, do you own a licensed firearm?
No.
Given the fact that you're fighting for a law license to have the right to bear arms, would you lead by example and apply for one?
No. Because I don't want one. But there are citizens, many of our constituents we have met, so it will be a matter of choice. It is not that we'll give 1.3 million people, hey, take this gun. That's not what I'm suggesting. But those who, they should have the right. You should have the choice that if you wish to apply and obtain one, you should have. I don't have one, and no, thank you. I don't want one. And by the way, my security is not beefed up, if you think that is what happened. You know, I'm listening to the TV news and I'm hearing the minister stand and saying, okay, given the threat to someone, I think it was to the president, we have beefed up the security of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and of course last on the list, the leader of the opposition. No, I do not have that.
You mentioned a new regime to deal with this.
Yes. Firearms license.
What is the issue now with the current regime?
Yeah. It's not working. I have a member, well, I will not want to disclose his privacy issues, but one member here told us, look, since 2005 they applied, and to date, nothing has happened. And there'll be many others with the same stories.
Have you gotten a response to your letter to
Not yet, no. No.
And just one other question. Senator Gerald Rameen is now under 2 investigations, one for prison aid and one which was exposed recently in Sunday Express,
Yeah.
having collected $200,000 for a crime not being died.
Yeah.
So would you continue to serve as the UNC senator?
I think, you know, there are very clear interests who target members of the opposition, especially those who are more vocal in raising issues on behalf of citizens. You know, I think you should speak with the Honourable Senator and find out the facts of that matter. A story was carried over the weekend. Given the way the story is written, it is clear that the senator is maybe such a heinous character, and so I am not of that view, and I suggest you all should get his response and his comments on what transpired in that matter. It will not be for me to sit down here and explain his business. Okay? But the answer is no. He will not be removed from the Senate based on the article that was written on, was reported recently in the newspaper. You know, if every time I have to do or write a story, not you, I mean whoever, every time something is reported I have to fire someone from these benches, I will have no one left on the bench. But should it come that there is due real cause, appropriate cause, I have already demonstrated I am willing, able, prepared, and I have done it. Where I was of the view that this was a situation, I have moved to remove persons from. I mean, even when government actually removed a minister, a sitting MP, from it, two in fact, they were sitting MPs, and that was a great risk, I will tell you, when you move an MP from a particular position. And I was prepared to take that risk because I felt in the circumstances it was justified, not because they were of the wrongdoing, but it was justified in the circumstances that the issues arose. So who was it you asked me? So it is not that in this situation it's a different rule. Where it is justified, I will act, and I have shown from my track record I am so willing to act. So we're getting totally off crime now. Can we? Thank you all. Yes, sir.
regarding crime, and it's an email that I just received here from the Office of the Prime Minister, and it has to deal with the statement by Mr. Nance on that show that you were speaking about earlier. What the email says really says, it mentioned the quoted the statement made by Mr. Nance, and it says that TNT and the U.S. have had a historic, enduring, multifaceted bilateral relationship built around significant cultural, economic, and national security interests and ties. It went on to state that Mr. Nance's statement, they called it broad and simplistic, these are the words being used here, is not supported by fact and ignores the robust and substantial national security cooperative partnership between TNT and the United States. So it also, and the headline for this particular release is Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and the United States long-standing collaboration on matters of national security. So as we speak about it here, a response has actually come from the Office of the Prime
Certainly,
Minister.
certainly. I hope that citizens will take comfort from that particular response. I am not sure if the long collaborative effort by the US, between the U.S. and Trinidad and Tobago is sufficient. I would have thought the statement would have gone further in giving comfort to Trinidad and Tobago citizens on the threat from terrorism. So, yes, I called for a statement, and now the statement has come. I'm saying I hope people take comfort. I don't take comfort from that statement. Oh, one second. An MP is asking for us in the statement, have they called upon the particular media house to for a retraction of that very damaging statement about Trinidad and Tobago?
It doesn't say anything to that extent. I've read the entire release, and it just went on to make mention of some of the facets,
the multifaceted collaborative approach. Okay, so there was no effort to seek an apology or retraction. I believe in the case of the Bahamas that has happened. Yes, sir?
Yeah, and Sean Ismail was saying that the former PP administration should bear some of the blame for the image of terrorism that we are.
I think we should all have a very nice evening. I thank you all very much, sir. I mean, please. Sorry, I didn't mean to diss you. Yes, Julie. Okay, we will give you a copy of the statement. Did we get copies, right? Yes. Should we give them now? Thank you much.